Everybody, welcome to Space Center Houston. Good to see you all. Great crowd. Welcome to this group from India. Give them a round of applause for being here and making space truly an international experience. For me, this began about a year ago. It was actually, I looked at my calendar, it was December 22nd, 2008. I had just been fired a couple of weeks prior from CNN, and I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was wondering what to do with my life. And I ran into Scott Parzynski at Grand Central Terminal in New York City. He came up to my shoe sign stand and asked for a spit shine. I gave it to him. He gave me a nice tip and bought me lunch. And we talked a little bit about his attempt to go to Everest the previous year, where he came ever so close to reaching the summit, but it was sad. It was a terrible thing. He was doing just that, as a matter of fact, when his back gave out and he had to turn back. You got as far as Camp 3, which is, really that's the last step before you get to the summit, and he didn't make it. And so we talked at lunch about what a shame that was. And, gosh, I'm available now. I'd like to at least get to base camp. And let's see if we can cook up a deal where we get this sponsored. We'll make it a viral experience on the web and on and on and on. Well, we executed everything about that except for the fact I didn't get to go. I ended up being mission control, which meant I sat in my laundry room in New York the whole time because I had another project, unfortunately. This is the world of being a freelancer. And this project taught me a little bit about freelancing. It's an emphasis on free, but that's another story. We did, in fact, experience a great response on the web, literally millions and millions of impressions, images, on some of these video chats we did, the blogging. The entire experience was really shared by the world in ways that you couldn't possibly have shared an Everest summit even just a few years ago. May 20th, 2009, Scott did it. Second time was a charm. Got up early to beat the rush because, anybody who's seen Into Thin Air, you want to get up there before the rush hour, so to speak, on Everest. He summited, and it was a great experience, and it turns out that there was a little special something that he was carrying with him besides his desire to get there, and that was these tiny little moon rocks, which Neil Armstrong picked up on the moon on July 20th, 1969. So that was kind of cool to have the moon rocks and Everest, and he picked up a rock, and thus was hatched this whole idea: where should these rocks be? Of course they should be at the International Space Station. And why not in the Tranquility Module? And why not in the cupola, which has the best view of Earth? What a good place for this all to be. And so we have not just the person who carried the moon rock and picked up the Everest rock, but we have the courier here. He's an astronaut. He's a shuttle commander. He is a Marine colonel. And we're still going to give him the rocks in spite of all that. George Zamka, they call him Zambo, is going to lead the next mission. They're in the final stages of their training. Their time is very precious, so we're glad to have him here to receive the rocks, take them up to the space station, where what better place for them to live and be. So without further ado, I want to introduce my friend Scott Parzynski, who will do the handoff, and we're going to hear a little bit about his adventure as well. Give him a round of applause.
Hey, thanks, Miles. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's a thrill to have all of you here, especially the Space School from India. It's a thrill to have you as part of this. And the folks that are watching on the web and later this afternoon on NASA TV, welcome. I'd like to start off by acknowledging my voice-actuated mouse, Miles O'Brien. Here he is here, as seen from his laundry room. Miles doesn't get out very much. When we proposed this idea, hatched this plan, Miles' wife, Sandy, said, no, you're not going. You're going to pay the bills, and I'm going to lock you in the laundry room until these guys get back. So unfortunately, Miles wasn't able to join us for the expedition in Nepal, but he was a huge support for the science, technology, engineering, and math outreach that we did, as well as to teachers and just the general public around the world during our expedition. So it really meant a lot to me to have you there, Miles. And
thanks.
It was really funny. One day, Miles was all chipper, and he had a little bit different backdrop. Turns out he was at the Econo Lodge in Cleveland, and Sandy had let him out for the day, but that was the only excitement that he had, I think, during
It was an
the whole 2
upgrade.
month.
You could call that an upgrade for the laundry room.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. My other friend here is Mr. Keith Cowing. You may recognize the name from spaceref.com and nasawatch.com. Where is Keith? Stand up. There. Go ahead, stand up, Keith. Oh, sorry. Sorry, you're bad. Now, that might have come off as a little bit of a mean-spirited jab, but there's a story behind it. Unfortunately, the brunt of the joke is me. But right before our summit push, we dropped down to low altitude, to 13,000 feet, a little village called Feriche, to get hydrated, to get some solid meals, to rest and recover. And you may not know this, but the Sherpa people are a little bit shorter than me in general. I'm kind of a big goon. And so the door jambs are right at 6 feet, and I repeatedly thwacked my head on the door, and Keith gleefully enjoyed that every time I did it. But Keith is an amazing guy. He's a huge advocate for the human and robotic exploration of space. He also is a member of the Challenger Center for Space Science Education Board, along with Miles and myself. And this is an organization that has 47 learning centers around the country that encourage kids to pursue math and science and careers in technology, and really excite kids through the adventure of a mission, either to the moon or a comet or Mars or places beyond. So we feel very, very strongly this is a wonderful organization and encourage you to find out more about it. Keith is also, as you may have read on his websites, a little bit thorny on occasion. If we could have the next slide. But I found kind of his kryptonite. Keith is deadly afraid of yaks. So this is the closest I could ever get him to approach a yak. This yak was as docile as you'll ever meet. You could pull his tail, jump on his back, whatever, but this is as close as I could get him to take a photograph with a yak. But unfortunately, it is true. But why are we here today? Let me explain my motivation for this. I consider myself to have lived an incredibly charmed life. I don't know why. I don't feel especially worthy of such good fortune, but I was born in this great country of ours, and I grew up in the shadows of many heroes: John Glenn, Jacques Cousteau, Neil Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin, Mike Collins, and then Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay Sherpa. And these were folks that I really looked up to as a kid, and here I am at age 5 with high aspirations even then. But it really is great to be able to grow up in a country where you can basically walk in the paths of these types of people. Neil and Sir Edmund Hillary in particular were huge inspirations to me. I read all about their exploits. And one thing that I learned is that they grew to become close friends later in life. They had, in fact, traveled to the South Pole together and stayed in close touch up until Sir Edmund's death not too long ago. So one of the things I wanted to do to honor them and pay tribute to great explorers was to take a small sample of the moon with me to the top of Everest and then bring back an Everest summit rock and display it in some fashion. And lo and behold, they actually gave me an Apollo 11 sample. I thought, well, maybe they'd give me Apollo 17 or some other mission, but they actually gave me some Apollo 11 samples here that you can see after the presentation. And so it was a real honor to have those with me, but I was terrified I was going to lose them. So one of the things that I did before going to the summit, I was afraid that up on the summit of the mountain wearing these huge mitts, I would drop this little quarter-sized sample, and then NASA would be after me for the rest of my life. And they wouldn't believe me that it fell down a 10,000-foot face. So I built this very fancy enclosure, and of course, all astronaut innovations involve gray tape. So this is actually gray tape, and then 2 Pringles lids. We had lots and lots of Pringles at Everest Base Camp, and it did a very nice job for carrying the gear. So next slide. I'm not going to tell you about how I single-handedly conquered Mount Everest, and in fact, what I'm going to tell you about is that it's an incredible team effort. And I wanted to tell you about a team that I was a part of and very proud to be a part of with George here, and I also have a couple of my former crewmates. Pam and Dan, if you want to stand up. And I promise not to tease you. It's great to have Ben here as well. But this is an amazing crew and an amazing flight to basically install a new module called Harmony, or Node 2, very similar to what George is going to take up on his upcoming flight. His is called Tranquility. One of the things that happened, though, during the flight is one of the solar arrays became torn during the redeployment of the P6 solar arrays. So it was really one of the high points, I think, of NASA's history to come together and develop a plan within 72 hours to go out and repair this solar array in a way that had never been envisioned before. Brilliant people. This is Derek Hausman, our lead flight director, Dina Cantella, EVA, Sarmad Aziz, robotics, and Swanee, our Capcom. Many, many people work together. This is Dan Tani and Stephanie Wilson, and in the backdrop you can see their robotics instructors. They were represented on orbit as well. But it was an amazing team effort both on the ground and up in space. There's Peggy and Yuri getting us slammed into the airlock. And George was a key part of this as well. The new module that we took up called Harmony became a metal shop. And so Peggy and George came together and built these cufflinks that actually stabilized the solar array. And Doug Wheelock and I went out and zippered it back together, and it worked like a charm. So this was a really neat photograph taken during the fly around that George did. And just wanted to brag a little bit about him. He has nerves of steel, because typically we have computers that talk to one another and work, and we can feed data into these computers and give the pilot the information to sense how far he's separated from the space station and the rates of separation and where he is relative to the space station. He didn't have any of that. He had just the little handheld laser that I was feeding him data in his eyeballs, and he flew a perfect fly around. So I know he's going to do a wonderful job on this upcoming mission. He's also a Marine, and this is our gag photo. Of course, we had Pam Melroy. Pambo was her call sign in the Air Force. Zambo here, we became the Rambo crew. I'm called Longbow. We have Boichi or Taibo with us here as well. But of all the people, Zambo scares me the most. I mean, look at this guy. So with that, we could call George out here and let me present this to you.
Oh, my goodness.
The only thing, it's a beautiful display, but it needs Velcro.
It does, to stick it up, we do. I wanted to just say a little bit about the rocks. First, about the nerves of steel, thanks for that. I wasn't talking a whole lot when that was going on, so maybe that's what he thought meant nerves of steel. I think I just wasn't being too social at that point. These rocks have already done more than a human being can do in a lifetime. For 4 billion years, they were on the moon undisturbed. They went through an ascent on a spaceship, traveled to Earth, and then Scott took them to the limits of human endurance by climbing up with them onto Mount Everest. And so they've already got a tremendous history. And they're about to get a mileage upgrade. When they go on the space station, they're going to travel at 17,500 miles an hour for a number of years. So they're going to get a tremendous trip, and they're going to be in the cupola of the Tranquility node that will be on the space station. And they'll be there as a reminder to all the astronauts that are up there of what human beings can do and what our challenges are. So this is a tremendous opportunity, and thanks so much for giving them to us today, Scott. Appreciate it.
George. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. So this is actually the fancy enclosure that I showed you, and the lunar samples as seen from base camp. And what I'm going to do is actually very quickly, because we don't have a lot of time together, take you through 2 seasons on Everest. A season takes about 2 months. So this is a large commitment of time. My first expedition was in 2008, and it was tongue-in-cheek, but we called it the free Everest. It really was not free. Can you hear me now? I feel like I'm in a commercial. It was more like a home equity loan Everest expedition when it all came down to pass. But we called it the free Everest expedition because the Chinese had closed off the north side of the mountain to all expeditions. It was the year of the Olympics, and they wanted to have a torch relay up to the top. And so I assume they just didn't want to have any free Tibet rallies on the top of Mount Everest. I'm not sure what a rally like that would look like. A bunch of guys in oxygen masks huffing and puffing. So it would have been very short at least. But we were impacted pretty substantially on this season because of their actions. But in any event, we were able to mount an expedition. This is my team from 2008. On the left is Adam Janikowski, who I'd climbed Denali with in Alaska. And then Angnamya Sherpa and Kami Sherpa, who was my sidekick. He'd already summited Mount Everest 8 times. He became a very close friend. And this is the rest of my IMG, or International Mountain Guides expedition. In the background, off in the far left there, you can, let me see, I actually have the laser pointer here. Let's use technology. So right up here is Mount Everest, and you can tell it's not a good climbing day today. Next slide. So obviously Mount Everest is a really, really big mountain. There's, for comparison, the Empire State Building. Just a joke, but it's basically 5 miles tall, 29,029 feet. As I said, takes about 2 months to ascend the mountain. Once you get there, it's a stair-step process of going through the ice fall several times, which is one of the riskier portions of the climb. You can see these large blocks of ice that you have to crawl across. Some of these crevasses are 200 feet deep, big seracs that may be 150 feet or 200 feet in height that tumble periodically. It's a pretty spooky place, but we try and leave base camp very early in the morning and get through there before the sun warms the ice fall, and then things start to relax. This past season, actually, we had 2 very significant avalanches, one of which was fatal, and I'll show you that in a moment. But that's basically what it's like going through the Khumbu ice fall. There are large ladders crossing some of these chasms. And of course, you're wearing lots and lots of gear. The boots that I'm wearing, you see here, are rated to -60. And in fact, if you have time after this, if you go over to the gallery, you can actually see the down suit and the oxygen mask and the crampons and the boots that I wore on the expedition. It's a pretty neat display. This is my friend Appa Sherpa, and he now holds the world record for summits of Everest 18 times to the top. Superhuman athlete. We always kind of joke that the Sherpas have 3 lungs and 2 hearts. You know, they have a genetic advantage. They're born at 12 to 13,000 feet above sea level, live their entire lives there, and just are phenomenal at altitude. So this is the high point that I achieved on my 2008 expedition. Out my tent fly here, you can actually see the 6th highest mountain in the world. It's only a little bit higher than where I am right now. This is up the Lhotse face, 24,500 feet. And this is where I developed excruciating back pain. And I'm talking about, I could not last for 30 seconds without having to shift and to try and reorient myself. And this is a self-portrait that I took the night before I was supposed to go to the summit. And it's tough for me to even look at this picture. If you know me, you might be able to see the pain in my face. My eyes are kind of bloodshot, and this is just really a scary moment for me. Not only because I don't know what's going on with my body, but I've dreamt my whole life of going from here to the top of Everest. And the next morning, I wasn't sure I'd be able to do it. So this is the sunset that evening, looking down the western Coombe, and hoping that the next morning I would feel better. Unfortunately, I did not. You can see me here in the lower right-hand quadrant here, and I'm just trying to stretch and do whatever I can to loosen up. I had to have my buddies put on my crampons for me. This is me waiting to have my oxygen cylinder put in my backpack so that I could try and struggle up the mountain. And I took actually, if you could go back, Miles, just one. I wanted to see if I could do it, so I saddled up and took a few paces up the mountain, and then I realized that if I did go up, not only would I jeopardize my own health, but I might place my teammates into a rescue situation, and I would also jeopardize their chances of success. So this was a gut-wrenching moment, but I had to do the right thing, and this is the point that I turned around. And not knowing if I would ever be able to come back. The other thing that I wanted to point out on this down suit that I'm wearing, it's essentially, you'll see it across the way, but it's like a walking sleeping bag. This thing is amazing. It's got down that's this thick. But I had some special patches sewn on the front of them, and this is the flag that was on my spacesuit during STS-120 and that solar array repair. That flag obviously meant a lot to me, so I put that on my down suit. So even if you have a pretty serious injury, you still have to get yourself down, and it's pretty steep, and it's a long, hard, arduous path. But on the bright side, I had an unlimited supply of ice. So I would just lay down every 20 or 30 minutes and stretch. And this is my buddy Bob Lowry, who is a hero to me. He really came through for me. He made it up to Camp 3 as well, but decided that he couldn't make it to the summit. He just ran out of steam. So he came down with me. He was a former martial artist and a physical trainer, so he stretched me out and helped me get down the mountain. And here I am at Advanced Base Camp, Camp 2, 21,500 feet. Spent one night there, and got ice on my back, hoping that the pain will go away, but it really did not. Despite that, one of my other climbing buddies, this is Monty at Camp 2, ended up having a very, very serious nosebleed at both both nares, and lost about 20% of his blood volume. So he was in incredibly rough shape. So we managed to get down to base camp, and ultimately, as Monty's personal physician, I was able to fly out on a helicopter with him, which is nice because it's, as Keith can attest, 36 miles coming down from base camp. And you do it in 3 days. It's quite a hike. So here we are. On the left is Monty in the helicopter, and then after we've been to the clinic in Kathmandu, he's got the nasal packs out. We went to the Rum Doodle, which is a famous restaurant in Kathmandu. And the tradition there is that if you summited Mount Everest, you can sign the wall behind the bar. And so Hillary and Messner and Tenzing Norgay and everybody, the who's who of mountaineering, has signed this wall. Monty and I were not worthy, but we did have an Everest beer at the Rum Doodle anyway. So as Miles mentioned, Everest never left the back of my mind. I always wanted to get back in some fashion. Didn't know how I would do it, but thanks to Miles and Keith and other people that were very encouraging, I was able to find sponsorship, and these are some of them. Spot is a geolocator, and also the Discovery Channel filmed this past year, and I was the team physician for that. So I was able to get back to the mountain, and it was such a joy to be back. I felt like it was almost like going back on a second space flight. Having been there, done that, I knew what to expect, all except for that very last day. And so I went with a lot of strength into the season this year. This is my really good friend, Danuru Sherpa. He's now summited 11 times, just a superstar. The climbing Sherpas in Nepal are like rock stars. They really are super athletes, and it was really an amazing experience to get to know them very well. Very quickly, I'll take you up the mountain. Our base camp is here at about 17,500 feet above sea level. It takes 3 to 4 hours to get up to Camp 1 once you're really, really fit, and you can do it quickly. Camp 1 is at about 19,000 and change. And then it's about a 5-mile hoof up this canyon. It's called the Western Coombe. It's a Welsh term, coombe for canyon, up to Camp 2 at 21,500 feet. And that's our advanced base camp. We spend a fair amount of time up there. So we'll take a trip up to Camp 2, spend a few nights, come back to base camp, recover for a few days, then repeat. And then you end up at Camp 3, spend a night or two up there, up the very steep Lhotse face. That camp is at 24,500 feet. And you come all the way back down to base camp and wait for the weather window. And we tried to summit in earlier May. May 11th would have been our summit day, but the weather closed in. And if any of you have seen the Everest Beyond the Limit series that just played right after Christmas, John Golden, one of my teammates, tried to get up in that weather window, and that window closed down on him, and none of them were able to summit. So we came all the way back down to base camp, and then, next slide. So back up a little bit and talk about our team. This is our Sherpa team, the IMG Sherpa team. And they are just the happiest and most contented people you will ever meet. They're incredibly kind-hearted. They're very spiritual. They believe in Tibetan Buddhism, and it was really an honor to spend time with them. This is my friend Rohan from Connecticut. He and I climbed together last season. He climbed with a different team this year, but he became the very first Jamaican and the very first African-American male to summit Mount Everest this year. So it was great to see him again. There's a nice photo of Denuru, my climbing partner. And next slide is, this is Ray Jean from Quebec, and this is Dawa Sherpa. And the story I have to tell you about these guys. I was going to climb to the top with Ray Jean. Unfortunately, he developed a medical issue on our first summit bid and had to turn around right at the top of the ice fall. And it was really difficult. I was about an hour ahead of him, and so I was giving him medical advice, actually sent Denuru down with some aspirin because that was something that was indicated at the time. And he ran down. Thankfully, that stalled him enough that he avoided getting trapped in a fatal avalanche. If you go to the next slide, we saw two incredibly powerful avalanches this season. This one on the right here, if Ray Jean and Dawa had left right away, probably would have been in the middle of this. And this is almost like a nuclear mushroom cloud when these things come across. They just cover the entire base camp, covering acres and acres of terrain. All of the pathway up the ice fall is obliterated after this. And so thankful that they narrowly missed getting caught in this avalanche. As it turns out, they were actually completely dusted with snow, and it was very difficult for them to breathe for about 2 minutes. Next slide. So now I'm going to take you up to the very top of the mountain. This is one of the crux sections of the mountain. This is called the Lhotse Face. It's very, very hard blue ice. And of course, we have crampons on our boots so we can kick in directly or edge in a little bit. There are fixed lines to also protect us. But if you were to become unclipped or to fall, it would be a certain death. It's 3,000 feet of vertical up this wall. You can only build, if you go back 1 mile, there are little platforms that we dig into the side of the mountain. Actually, our Sherpa team thankfully did this. I'm not sure I would have had enough energy to build these tent platforms. But at the beginning of the season, the teams go up and build up these little tiny platforms, just big enough to accommodate a little tent. And you can actually see that there are lines all the way through camp. The reason being, if you were to go out in the middle of the night to attend to nature, if you don't clip in, it's possible that you could be swept on down the mountain, and that has indeed happened. So they put in safety lines all through the camp. Next slide. Here we are, hypoxic at 24,500 feet. This is Denuru, and this is Sanduk Sherpa, and he was Ed Wardell's Sherpa. He helped with the filming of the Discovery series. Really great guy. Denuru and I got up very early the following morning. I guess this would be the 19th. This would be May 19th. Around 5 in the morning, we got a head start on pretty much every team. We passed several teams and really felt strong. This is called the Yellow Band at 25,000 feet. You can see back here a chain of ants. Those are climbers coming from Camp 3. It's very, very beautiful, but also kind of intimidating. It's very, very steep up on the top of the mountain here. We're heading towards Camp 4, which is our final camp. This is called the Geneva Spur. If you've read Into Thin Air or any books about Everest, it's a very prominent landmark on the way to the south col of the mountain, which is the saddle between Lhotse, which is the 4th highest mountain in the world, and Mount Everest. And of course, at this point, I'm wearing oxygen. Denuru doesn't need it until Camp 4, but he's a lot tougher than I am. And here we are at Camp 4. This is the most desolate, wind-swept place you can imagine. And hopefully there aren't any media here. This is a joke. I'm prelude to that. I kid a lot of times that this is where NASA faked the moon landings, because it's just such a unbelievably desolate place that you can't believe it. But thankfully, when we're up there, it is relatively calm. We rested for several hours. I got up here at around 9 in the morning. We drank lots of tea, ate what we could. You don't have much of an appetite at these altitudes, but ate what we could. And then the plan was to leave that evening at around 9 o'clock at night. This is the view up towards the summit from Camp 4. And we'll go up this triangular face up here to the balcony at about 28,000 feet, and then follow the southeast ridge up to the south summit. And then you actually have to drop down a little bit to a cornice ridge, very airy, and I'll show you some pictures of that later, cross the Hillary Step, and then up to the true summit. And so we left at 8:17 in the morning. I really didn't want to be in a situation, as other climbers have, where they've been in a bottleneck and caught and frostbitten and just taking too many risks. So I left early, set a nice solid pace, and we led the whole way. And my ultimate goal was to arrive at the summit for an orbital sunrise. When we're up in space, we see these beautiful sunrises, but they happen so quick. You're traveling at 17,500 miles an hour, and it's a beautiful sphere, the sun rising up beyond the limb of the Earth, the whole spectrum of light flashing before your eye, but it happens quickly. And so I wanted to get up here and savor that experience, and I did. It was 4:05 in the morning when the orange hue started, and on my descent down the summit ridge, I saw the full sunrise. So it was a really powerful experience. I took, obviously, family photos with me. This behind me here is actually kind of neat. It's a golden Buddha in a case. And some devout Sherpa or team of Sherpas brought that up there. I'm also sitting on a number of prayer flags, and these have special significance in Tibet and also in this region of Nepal. The notion is these Sanskrit written prayers are taken to high mountain passes, bridges, and summits of mountains. And through the test of time, the wind, the sun, the snow, the elements, they slowly disintegrate, and the prayers are carried up to heaven. So one of the things that I wanted to do is also pay tribute to some of my heroes of space exploration. So I had these flags made that pay tribute to the Apollo 1, Challenger, Columbia, Soyuz 1, and Soyuz 11 crews. And so these flags exist now up on the top of the world, and slowly but surely they'll also be carried back up into the heavens. So. And I'd already displayed this little fancy container, but this is the summit of Mount Everest, or just down the slope from the summit, because it was getting kind of crowded at this point. The lunar sample, and then Deneuer really nailed this picture. You can see that little sliver of a moon at the top of the frame. You can also see the frost on my eyebrows, and it's cold up there. It's probably minus 40 or below at this point. You can also see the curvature of the Earth from this vantage point, and it's just unbelievable airy view on the summit ridge. Some of the sections of the summit ridge are only enough for your boot to fit onto. And it's perhaps morbid climber humor, but the joke is if you're going to fall at this point, you want to fall to the left, not to the right, because if you fall to the right, you're going to fall 8,000 feet straight down. If you fall to the left, it's 10,000 feet straight down, so you live longer. So we think that's funny, I don't know. So one of the things that was kind of cool for my summit is that I summited at night. So I just kind of blazed up the Hillary Step. I didn't have this perspective of looking 10,000 feet straight down. I think that would be kind of a big gulp moment. But this is what it looks like from the south summit. This is the Cornice Ridge. It's kind of hidden behind this point here, but you drop down about 50 or 60 feet, across the Cornice Ridge here, and then the crux is right up here. It's about 60 feet of serious climbing with lots and lots of views, I guess you would say. And next slide. Here's a close-up view of the Hillary Step. And probably the toughest part is this traverse here on mixed rock and ice and snow. And you're very, very careful, especially coming down. It's one thing as you're climbing up a mountain, if you fall and trip, you're going to fall into the mountain. But on your way down, if you catch a point, it can be a really bad day. So you really pay attention on the way down. But you're also distracted by views like this. This is the shadow of Everest as seen from that summit ridge. Just beautiful. And arriving back at base camp, it's about a 6-day round trip from base camp when you commit to the summit, from base camp to the top and back down. And I'm 25 pounds lighter than when I started this expedition. So I think I'm going to write a fad book called The Everest Diet. I hope you buy it. And here we are at the Rum Doodle, the famous Rum Doodle. And this is my buddy Dawes Eddy. And I don't know if you'd seen the Discovery Channel, you would have been introduced to him. But he's an amazing human being. He's 66 years old. And for one day, unfortunately, he didn't hold the record for too long, but he became the oldest American to stand on the top of the world. He summited with me. He's an ultra-marathoner and just a great spirit, always smiling, always positive, and it was really amazing to share the experience with him. And here we are at dinner after the expedition. I usually don't condone the use of alcohol, but on occasion, here we are with our Everest beers, and really had a great time that night. This is Keith, of course, and then Mike Hamill and Chris, who I think will be going back next year. He made it up a little bit above Camp 4, and is a very strong climber. I hope he goes back and tops out. And there's Dawes.
Hey, Mike,
so one of the fun things we did is had communications with the International Space Station. Mike Barrett and Koichi Wakata were on orbit, my close buddies. And it was actually Mike Barrett's 50th birthday, so we'll just play this little video.
Hey, Mike, this is Scott and friends. How you doing? Happy birthday. Oh, I really struggled to figure out something to get you, a guy that has everything in the world, for his birthday, for his 50th birthday. And I decided the best thing I could do for you is not sing happy birthday to you. Instead, I've enlisted the support of Danuru and his singing Sherpas. And they're going to sing happy birthday to you in the Sherpa language. So hit it, boys. There you go. Happy birthday, Mike. Happy birthday, Mike. Everyone here at base camp or at Camp 2 wishes you happy birthday. You should hear their studio cut. They're awesome. That's just impromptu, but once you hear them on vinyl, they're great. I wish you continued success on your expedition. If all goes well, in a few weeks, we'll somehow figure out a way to patch into you from the summit of Everest.
So there you go. Thank you very much for being here today. So I think we have time for a few questions. Miles, you want to?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but if you have any questions for Scott or Keith or myself about the project or about, he's got a lot of things he can talk about. We can't talk about, like being in space and summiting Everest, but if you have any questions about what he did and how he did it, yeah, go ahead.
The question is about the fact that your back hurt you
Yeah.
so much the first time, and do you know what that was, and why didn't it happen the
Yeah,
second time?
I should have mentioned that, actually. I came home. I assumed that the pain would go away as it always had in the past. I'm a fairly tall guy, so I'd had back issues in the past. Turns out I had a ruptured disc in my back. And so the pain was not going away. In fact, it was getting worse. And so I had surgery, and that enabled me to get back to the mountain this year.
That's an important detail you left out there.
Yeah, I know.
He was not kidding around. His back really hurt. Go ahead.
Do the difficulties faced in the Mount Everest and in the space are similar or what?
Well, that's a great question. They're very similar in many ways. You saw on the summit of Mount Everest wearing the big down suit, wearing oxygen, big bulky gloves, ropes and things, kind of like tethers we use out on spacewalks. So when I left my tent that morning for the summit, in the pitch darkness, I felt like I was leaving the airlock of the International Space Station. I had all this gear on. I was dependent on my gear, my training, my physical fitness. I was counting on my mission control team at base camp and back at the laundry room. And so it really felt a lot like a space flight. There's some differences, though, too. I think on Mount Everest, when you're out there, even in base camp, you feel at risk from the elements all the time because it's cold, it's uncomfortable. You're exerting yourself very, very hard every single day. Whereas up in space, you see us and we're floating around and we push off with our fingertips and fly like Buzz Lightyear and do all these neat things. And so it's not, you don't have the same sense of risk or danger as you do on Mount Everest, even though it's there. But good question.
So space is a piece of cake by comparison.
No.
Go ahead.
In such an adverse area that you are doing, what do you usually eat?
On the mountain? Yeah, so we took a fair amount of Western food.
It's not exactly
with-
haute cuisine, is it?
No,
Yeah, right,
well,
no.
it's haute, but it's not cuisine. This is the right way to say it. Yeah, so we ate a lot of the Sherpa food, and they love, and I used to love it too, called dal bhat, and it's rice and lentils, and I know it's kind of exotic. It's a neat taste, but it was coming out of my skin by the second month. I was so sick of it. And then the other thing that they take up to the high camps is Spam. And I'm not a big fan of Spam anymore because they would fry it, they would boil it, they had all sorts of different ways to prepare it, but it was still Spam. Space food is better.
Question in the back.
Talked about it being very crowded up there. How many people at any time are climbing the mountain, and what percentage is successful?
Well, I define success by making a round trip. So whether or not you tag the summit, there are about 250 to 300 aspirants each year that try, typically. And I don't know the final count this year, to be perfectly honest. That was the number from 2008. I'm not exactly sure for this year.
But it would surprise me were the numbers in base camp. There are quite a few people who go to base camp,
yeah,
right?
so the infrastructure to
Yeah.
support, so there are cooks and porters and yak teams that are coming and going. And then one thing I forgot to mention, we had a great team led by Sabrina Singh here at the Johnson Space Center. She brought in a trekking team from NASA both years, and it was really a thrill to have them come in. But trekkers come into base camp as well. So the city grows to probably 1,000 people at its peak. A lot of people in base camp. But once you get up higher in the mountain, it's much more limited. You want to, as I said, be ahead of the game. Hopefully, pick a day where not as many people are going up, because even 40 or 50 people is a crowd up there, and so that we have seen days where 40 or 50 people have tried to go up, and it wasn't a factor for my day. I think we may have had 35 people try. The success ratio, it's 1 in 3 who leave base camp for the summit make it to the top.
1 in 3. And on that ridge, it's a one-way path. You can't.
That's right.
You have to wait.
You have to wait on one
Yeah.
side of the cornice or the other.
Anybody else with questions?
If you were given a chance to live in moon, what would you do? How would you feel?
I'm sorry?
If you
Chance to
were
live on the
given
moon.
a chance to live in moon,
Oh, yeah.
what would you do? How would you feel?
I would be thrilled to live on the moon, and I hope that in the years to come, we will be going back to the moon to live, to stay for not just a few days at a time, but to explore, to visit unseen craters, to see if we can live off of the land, maybe even to use the structure of the craters there for radio astronomy. There are all sorts of things that we could do to explore the moon, and also understand the origins of our solar system. And then also use that as a test bed so that we can ultimately get to the planet Mars, which has a lot of promise for understanding how life might have once evolved in another planet.
What's the tallest peak on the moon? Do you know?
I think it's like 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
Anyone?
10,000 feet at 1/6 gravity, no problem. Right? You can do that in a day. It'd be a stroll, right?
Yeah, and then
Hop right
actually
up.
the Olympus Mons on Mars is 25 miles tall, so it's 5 times as high as Everest.
Yeah, but that's 1/3 G, so that'd
Yeah.
be
That'd be more of a challenge.
That'd be more of a
yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
So Scott, what now?
Life is very exciting. I have this actual event is sort of the final chapter in my my Everest expedition, sharing it with Miles and Keith and all of you, and handing the rocks back to NASA into George's care. But I have there are other mountains to climb, other exciting adventures out there. I don't know if they'll be exciting to the greater world, but that's not probably so important. I know that I'll always have adventure in my life, and we'll see where it takes me. Maybe. No,
The question was, does he want to write a book?
Yeah. That's a lot of work, I think.
It's actually more work than doing Everest.
Yeah, I think that
Go ahead.
hard.
Go ahead.
If you are given a chance to, if Chandrayaan has found water on the moon, do you believe it?
I do. I very, very much believe that the discoveries of the Chandra satellite have discovered water on the moon, and it's a great target for us to send human beings as well, because we can use that water ice to extract oxygen, to extract water as well, to melt it for drinking, maybe even to grow crops using the lunar soil. So it's a very exciting discovery, and I think that may be the very first place where we send human beings back to the moon.
2 more questions, and you can probably make rocket fuel out of that too, right? Hydrogen and oxygen.
That's right.
Absolutely. It's possible. Go ahead.
How much days did it took to climb Mount Everest?
How much?
How
many days?
Total?
It was 60 days from leaving here in Houston, my home, to standing on the top. So 2 full months.
Now you see why I couldn't go.
Yeah.
Couldn't get out of the house.
We
Couldn't get out of the laundry room.
Yeah.
Too many spin cycles to do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You made all the way to space, and you even conquered Mount Everest. So, which, according to you, is a greater achievement?
Oh,
good question.
That's good.
Good question. I gave him that question.
Yeah, you're a plant. Yeah.
Future reporter right there, I'll tell you. Right? Yeah.
That's a great question. They're very different. You know, I wouldn't trade either experience for the world. They're very, very different. I'm very, like I said, very proud to have been able to follow my dreams and to get to space and then onto the top of Mount Everest. They were both very different, though. But they're experiences that will always stay with me, for sure.
I think you waffled on that one.
I did.
That was an official waffle. Yeah. All right. I think is that about as much time as we have?
Turn off his microphone, will you?
Yeah. Listen, thank you very much for joining us here. It was great to see you all, especially this group from India. Thank you for being here. Give them a round of applause, and we wish you well. Congratulations on your space. I think, are we giving each other feedback? Get away from me. Get away. I think it's the microphones. Yeah.
We used to be friends.
Yeah, no. Take your wireless and get out of here. Thanks for dinner last night. Appreciate that. But get out of here, will you? All right, so what we're going to do now, thank you to everybody who's here. George, I thought you had to go to training. He's got to get back to training, but we want to thank him for coming and receiving the plaque. It's going to be really cool to see that in space. We also have, we want to get some pictures out by the spacesuit area. Is that right?
Yes.
And there'll be an opportunity there for reporters to ask questions and do that. That's immediately, out to the right? Which way?
Across the hall.
Across the hall. You sort of can't miss it. So meet us out there. We're going to be here for a little bit. I think George has to go pretty quickly, right? But you're going to be able to join us for a little bit of that. And so you can sort of shake everybody's hand and do all that. But thanks again for being here. It was a great experience for me, even though I never left the laundry room. It really had a lot of fun. And maybe one day I'll get a chance to go there. But in the meantime, I'll be doing my spin cycle. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Mike. Good job.